where you're from, where you were born, where you lived, and a little bit of your background leading up to law enforcement, please, ma'am.
Good morning, everybody. I was born in Charleston, South Carolina. When I was about 6 months old, my family moved back to England, where we were originally from. Lived there until I was about 3 or 4 years old. Came back to, grew up in Summerville, South Carolina. Graduated from Summerville High School. After I graduated, I was working as a dog groomer. Met my would-be my husband. We moved to Port Royal, South Carolina. He was in the Marine Corps, stationed at Parris Island at the time. We moved to Bluffton. We had decided, I decided to pursue law enforcement. I've always been a true crime nerd, into mysteries, things like that, so I decided to pursue law enforcement. I graduated from the South Carolina Criminal Justice Academy in 2010 and was working at the Bluffton Police Department, where I held various roles. On patrol, became a detective, then I was promoted to a supervisor, where I supervised a patrol shift, and then eventually supervised the detective unit at Bluffton PD. My husband and I decided we wanted a lot of kids. So after I had my third civilian job, get out of law enforcement for a little bit with a better schedule. So I briefly worked on Parris Island as a sexual assault victim, especially investigations. I first tried Beaufort Police Department, but it would take several years for them to have an opening in criminal investigations. So then I came to the Colleton County in September 2020. And February 2021, I was transferred to the Criminal Investigation Division, where I currently am now. My main focus is child crimes, which means children of sexual and physical abuse. Those are the cases that I predominantly work as well. I'm a South Carolina ICAC task force member, and what that means is it's internet crimes against children, and that's a task force that's partnership with the General's Office. And we basically battle online child predators, child pornography, those types of cases. We do rotate homicides in the detective division among 9 of us.
At some point, did you work at Parris Island?
I did, yes, sir.
Tell these folks what you did there.
I was the sexual victim advocate for civilians on the base.
And your
trainings hosted by other law enforcement agencies, state and federal.
How many children do you have now?
We have 4.
Okay. And does your husband work?
He does.
Does he work at home?
He does. Mm-hmm.
So you started full-time with Colleton in what year?
2020.
Okay. And what was your role when you first started with Colleton County Sheriff's Department?
I started on patrol to familiarize myself with the county.
And then did you work yourself, or not work out, but did you become a detective?
I did, yes.
Okay. When was that?
February 2021.
On June 7th of 2021. Well, let me ask before you get there. Where do you, not to pry, don't want the world to know, but they're going to, where do you live?
I live in Ridgeland.
Okay. Now, on June 7th of 2021, were you on call?
I was.
Okay. How far is it from Ridgeland to here?
45 minutes to an hour, depending on traffic and what part of Colleton County I'm going to.
Did you receive a
4147 Moselle Road, but due to my long warrant for the property.
And who were you coordinating with during that? I mean, who was your boss?
That's Captain Jason Chapman.
And after you'd received the call, did you confer with Captain Chapman?
I did.
Okay. And as a result of that, what did you do?
I was able to secure a search warrant for the property.
Okay. And for 4147 Moselle?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What did you do after you got the search warrant?
I notified everybody over the radio that I had the search warrant signed because I wasn't sure if the SLED crime scene unit was waiting on me, and it was still going to take some time to get out there. And then I made my way to 4147 Moselle Road with the warrant.
Had you been out there before to 4147 Moselle?
Never.
When you went out there, did you know what your role was going to be as you were going out there?
I did not.
When you got to the
several SLED agents as well as Colleton County deputies at the scene, I was basically the last one there. And I met with my supervisor, Captain Jason Chapman, and presented them with the search warrant as well as he asked me if I knew the Murdaugh family, to which I replied I did not. They then asked me if I was familiar with a boat accident that had happened in Beaufort, and my reply was, I've heard of it, but I don't know the details. So with that information, they said, okay, you're going to be assigned as the liaison with the lead's case, who was identified as Senior Special Agent David Owen, and that my task was going to be to assist him with anything he may need that evening at the scene and throughout the investigation.
And I think we've heard prior testimony, but the case was...
It was going to be the lead agency on the case.
And did you know Special Agent David Owens prior to that night?
I did not.
Okay. But did you get to know him and actually get to work with him some?
I did, yes, sir.
And let's start out with that job. When you first got...
So the first thing as I approached I'm sure you've all heard of the kennels, was the overwhelming feet inside the plane of the door. There was brain, blood, hair, skull matter, all within the feed room and the ceiling. There was a deceased female, approximately 30 feet across from where his body was, and she was covered as well. But I had been told that they both had gunshot wounds to their heads. Mr. Alex Murdaugh.
Now, did you know, everybody's referring to as Paul and Maggie, did you know Paul Murdaugh and or Maggie Murdaugh?
I did not.
Laying dead on the ground?
No. Mr. Murdaugh, Alec, standing at the back of there was his Suburban, and then there was, I believe his brother Randy had arrived at this, and they were standing behind Randy's truck, so they couldn't see the scene anymore. So we approached him and asked if he would speak with us. He introduced the man standing next to him as his personal attorney, Danny Henderson, and he agreed to speak with us. By this point, it had started to rain, so we utilized Agent Owen's vehicle to do the interview.
To that, had you made any other observations about bullet holes or shell casings?
Area in front to the left on the ground, in between, there was like a gravel area in between the two buildings.
Had you seen what's been referred to as the feed room? And
yes.
Okay, what did you observe in there?
Inside the feed room, I did observe body matter that had been on the ceiling, as well as covered in items inside the feed room. There was shotgun concrete.
Did you see any holes?
Feed room that had several holes in it.
I'm going to skip. I want to skip the statement for a second. All right. Mm-hmm. After you took the statement, we're going to get into that. Did you go back and look at the scene with either Captain Chapman, and I say the scene, the shelters, the dog kennel? Tell the ladies and gentlemen, first of all, why you did that and what were your observations, please, ma'am?
Well, it was such a large scene. I decided to canvass the outer part of the scene, and while I was doing that, keep in mind it was late at night, it was dark, so we had flashlights. So while I was doing that, I noted some what appeared to me to be fresh shoe impressions in a sandy part of the shed on the left side. Some tractors in the wall of the shed. There was several fresh shoe impressions.
And when you say fresh shoe impression, kind of obvious, but what does that mean?
It had been left fairly recently.
What did they appear to you to be?
They looked like a flat sandal, flip-flop type shoe, not particularly large in size. Flat.
Were they one set of footprints or two based on your observation?
It was one set of prints that looked like it went down one direction and possibly came back.
No doubt about that in your mind?
No doubt about that.
So if you watched me there, was it like one set of prints going this way?
Yes.
And then it looked like one set of prints coming back this way?
Yes, because they did overlap each other a little bit.
With you when you were looking at these?
I was by myself initially, and then I found my supervisor, Captain Chapman, and showed him what I had found.
Where were y'all walking when you were looking at the prints?
We had made the decision at that point, due to the type of incident that it was, and we didn't really know what we had yet, to follow the footprints and see if there was any additional evidence and find out where that person may have been trying to go. So what we did is we stayed to the left side of the shoe prints closest to the tractors and followed the prints down. Noted that they stopped at the end of the building, turned around, and came back.
And I'm going to show you what's entered the state's 194. You're just referring to?
No.
Okay. What does this depict?
That depicts several what appear to be boot prints on as well.
Is this the same path y'all walk?
Yes.
Okay. And let me show you. State's 195. Do you recognize this?
Yeah, those are the flat, just the flat ones impressions.
Show you what's marked States 22. Do you recognize this, and does it relate to you? Are we on? And getting a little closer view on States 194.
Yes, that's the left side of the hanger.
Can you show in this picture the prints you were talking about, the foot?
These flat ones. Hard to see, there's a big flare.
Okay. And let me put in States 195 too, Detective.
Yeah, these flat impressions, these flat ones. You will see.
Were those the foot impressions you saw that night? The flat ones?
Yes.
Okay. Were there any other foot impressions beside the flat ones that you saw?
No,
Okay. On evening of June 7th, early morning June 8th of 2021?
that's correct.
You're positive?
Positive.
And again, when you and the captain walked, how far were you from the sandals?
A foot to the left.
Is any bad way? But could some of those other prints? Now you were and I'm going to do this without putting it up. This is one of those pictures that we've on States 7. You're a lady.
Yes, sir.
You know what women's shoes look like?
Yes, sir.
Did you go and look at Maggie's shoes she was wearing?
I did.
Okay. Why'd you do that?
To see if they matched the flat impressions I had seen.
And were they similar to you?
Very similar. Yes.
And States 200, do you recognize those?
Yes.
And what are those?
Those are the sandals Miss Murdaugh had.
And did they appear to be similar to the footprints you saw?
Yes, very.
Now, did Mr. Harpootlian or one of their investigators contact you about these footprints?
They did.
Okay, was it the pictures we just put up?
It was.
And did you tell them that, well, what did you tell them when they sent you that?
That those were not my impressions.
That those weren't your? All right, let's get back to, I think you said, on the defendant, Richard Alexander Murdaugh, the defendant had said, introduced you to who before you started the interview?
Danny Henderson said he was his personal attorney.
His personal attorney.
Yes.
Did he want his attorney in the car with you?
He did.
Okay. And I believe you said it was right all do to get out of the elements.
We sat inside Agent Owens with sled inside his vehicle.
And please tell the ladies and gentlemen of this jury specifically where everybody was sitting.
Agent Owen was in the driver's seat. Alex Murdaugh was in the front passenger seat. I sat directly behind him, and then Mr. Henderson sat to my left.
Please listen to me. First time, was that the first time you met Alex Murdaugh?
It was.
Did he appear to you to be under the influence of alcohol, drugs, or any other intoxicant when you saw him?
He did not.
Did he appear to you to understand your questions and Special Agent David Owens' questions when y'all were talking to him?
He did.
Were his answers to either you or Agent Owens timely?
Yes.
Were they subject matter appropriate?
Yes, they were.
Did you have any trouble understanding?
Twice to repeat a question, but he was understanding what was being discussed.
I will show you what Smart states 153. At my request, did you review this yesterday?
I did.
And does this states very accurately reflect the interview you, Agent Owens, had with the defendant, Richard Alexander Murdaugh?
It does.
Your Honor, at this time, 153, I believe without objection. Respectfully published.
It is.
Is that you back in the back?
That is me.
Who was that?
That is Special Agent Owen.
Who was that?
Danny Henderson.
All right, sir. All right, Mr. Murdaugh, state your full name for me, please.
Richard Alexander Murdaugh.
And spell your last name so that it's correct.
Murdaugh.
All right.
Yes, sir.
And date of birth, Mr. Murdaugh.
May 27th, 1968.
And your phone number for you.
803-942-1227.
What was your name?
Yeah.
All right. And I'm going to run this Talbot County on the sled. I hate to have to do this.
I understand.
Yeah.
I totally
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah.
So you don't have any problem with it.
So, just start at the top, take your time.
Like when I came back here, I mean, I pulled up and I could see him, and you know, I knew something was bad. I ran out. I knew it was really bad. My boy over there, I could see it was. And I could see his brain almost. And I ran over to Maggie over first. You know, I tried to turn him over, and I don't know, I figured it out. His cell phone popped out of his pocket. I started trying to do something with it, thinking maybe, but then
Did you touch Maggie at all?
I did. I touched them both. I tried to take a pulse on both of them. And, you know, I called 911 pretty much right away. And she was very good. I talked to her. I told her I was going to get off the phone to call some family members. I did that.
What family members did you call?
I called my brother Randy, and I called my brother John. And I tried to call a little boy, a real good friend that's right around the corner from here, but I didn't get him. Somebody thing, yes sir.
I mean, like any other evidence. I know you said, did you see anything else that didn't belong or shouldn't belong or that wasn't part of Paul?
No sir, not the. No, sir.
How about Maggie?
No, sir.
You didn't see anything around them? What made you come out here tonight?
I went to, my mom's a late stage Alzheimer's patient. My dad's in the hospital. My mom gets anxious when she does. I went to check on them, and Maggie's a dog lover, and she fools with the dogs. And I knew she was going to the kennel. I was at the house. I left the house to my mom's for just a little while. Tried to call her when I left. Texted her, no response. When I got back to the house was obviously nobody was in there. So I figured they're still up here fooling around. Paul's gonna be getting set up to plant. Our sunflower seeds got died, and he was refiguring to plant sunflower seeds. So I came back up here and drove up and saw and called.
Had Maggie and Paul been arguing over anything?
No.
What was their relationship like?
Wonderful.
Wonderful. How about yours and Maggie's?
Wonderful. I mean, I'm sure we had little things here and there, but we had a wonderful marriage, wonderful relationship.
And yours and Paul's relationship?
As it could be.
How was Paul? You know his date of birth?
I do. April 11th, 96 is his brother's. April 14th, 99 is Paul's.
What's Maggie's full name?
Margaret Brandstetter Murdaugh.
And her date of birth, sir?
September 5th.
Have y'all been having any problems out here? Trespassers, people breaking in?
None that I know of. The only thing that what comes to my mind is my son Paul was arrested a couple years ago, and there's been he was charged with being arrested for being a driver. There's been a lot of negative publicity about that, and there's been a lot of people online just really vile stuff. But when Paul's out and about, but it's not that I know of.
Has he, other than being assaulted, has he received any direct threats related to the boat accident?
Oh yes, all the time.
Recently?
Yes. I mean,
Okay.
he gets them all the time.
What kind of?
I'm gonna kick your ass. I've never been privy firsthand.
Is that through social media? Or?
No, ma'am. It's mostly like if he goes out places is what goes out, like somewhere He's in college, so he goes out, is what I understand. No friends on that.
Who's his best friend?
His best friend in Colombia is Chapman, Will Loving, Bobby Boyle, Will Chapman, and Paul get to move into a house together in Colombia.
You said Will Chapman and Will Loving?
Will's with an S, Chapman, and Will with an L, Loving. Around here, his best friends are clearly, and Roden Gibson.
Nolan Tootin.
Yes, sir.
Have you talked with any of these guys tonight?
Talked with Nolan, yes, sir.
Is he out here?
Yes, sir. I tried to call Roden, was one of the people he's the boy that I told you lives around the corner. That's very, he's just a good, healthy young man. You mind if I open the door real quick?
Go ahead. Do what you need to do. So is there anybody that you can think of that we need to talk to tonight? Is there a name that comes to mind?
I mean, I can't tell you anybody that I'm overly suspicious of off the top of my head. It's such a stupid thing. I'm even embarrassed to say it. But it just didn't make any sense. I just hired a guy out here, and he wasn't cutting the mustard, but I hadn't told him this yet. He told Paul a story the other day about how when he was in high school, he got in a fight with some black guys. And the FBI undercover team observed him fighting those guys and put him on an undercover team with 3 Navy SEALs. And that their job was to kill radical Black Panthers. And they did that from Myrtle Beach to Savannah. Is probably the person, but that's just so freaking.
Yeah, that's kind of a far-fetched
It's
story.
weird. He's off today.
Okay.
He took his daddy to the doctor.
What's his name?
C.B. Rudd.
W.E.?
Yeah, and I sent him a message to text when I was on the way to my mom's house.
Did you talk to him at that time?
Briefly, I was on the phone with a lawyer friend of mine named Chris Wilson from Bamberg, so I told him I'd call him back.
To Mr. Rowe, what was his demeanor or attitude? Or
I mean, it seemed normal. I mean, I asked him about the sunflowers and stuff.
does he live?
I don't exactly know, somewhere in Brunson.
Okay. Do you have his phone number?
I do.
You got it with you, Lisa?
I do. But I do think him and Paul got along pretty well. That's just really, really weird. All right. CD.
Right there. You glad? Eight, 4, 3, 5, 0, 9, 3, 3, 5. You can do that phone number charge. Is that an iPhone?
Yes, sir.
Watch it for seconds.
Thank you.
When did you tell that story to Paul?
Sometime last week. Paul actually, I really do not think, in all honesty, that it's him. Paul was so taken aback by it that he sent, I'll find it, I got it on my phone. He recorded him saying bits and pieces of it. But for all this weirdness, I mean, I do think they they got along pretty good.
How long have you been working here?
That's about 3 or 4 pay periods, so 8 weeks, couple months.
Going back to the boat incident, anybody on that really have a hard on for Paul that you would think would come after him, or know of any direct threats from people on the boat?
I don't know direct threats between any of the people on the boat specifically, but I do think there's been a small amount of yap between a couple of them, but not recently.
Okay.
And most of this was stuff from people that Paul didn't really know.
Okay.
There were some people that he knew distantly, but more times than not, when I learned about it, it's like, for example, he went out in Charleston a couple months ago, came out, so, Paul was a real tough man's man. He
would defend himself, but he hadn't been.
That's right. But
How was he handling that? He's over everybody,
as far as what?
handling it.
I've never been prouder of him than the way he has handled the pressures that in that situation. I think I've told Danny that before. I mean, Paul is a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful kid. He can do almost anything. He gets along with almost anybody.
Do y'all store any weapons out here?
We don't store them, but they're frequently out here. I need to find out if there were any out here because I'll have to find out exactly when that was. I think it got put up, but I'm not positive.
What did that shotgun look like?
It was camouflage. I want to say it was a Beretta. I can't remember which brand it is. But I don't think it was out here recently. But I'm not positive.
And the shotgun that you had when deputies pulled up, where did that gun come from?
I went to the house and I got a gun. Probably overreacting, but.
And was that when you pulled up and saw them?
No, I came out and, I called 911 first. Talked to them for a little while, and then I told her that I was going to go to the house.
Okay.
And that I would let authorities know when they got here.
Do you happen to have a list of all your guns?
I can make one. I don't have one.
Here now it's missing.
Absolutely.
Try to figure that out.
No, absolutely.
And I know living up here in Kentucky, you probably have more than 1 or 2.
We do. We probably have 20, 25 guns,
Yeah. Shotguns, rifles.
pistols.
Any rifles?
Yes, sir.
What kind of rifles?
All kinds.
Yeah.
All kinds. You name it across the board, we have them.
Okay.
All of them we have are, in a hunting room in our house.
was their schedule today? When did they get home?
My son works for my brother, and he was coming home to deal with the sunflowers. He got here pretty early because he and I rode around looking at everything for a good little while, probably 45 minutes to an hour. Maggie had things she did in Charleston, and she had a doctor's appointment in Charleston, and she got back here. It was fairly late.
Was it dark yet when Paul got home?
No, Paul got home early.
Early, okay. So before dinner time?
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Lunchtime? Or?
No, ma'am.
What brother does Paul work for?
John Bartlett,
And what does Paul do for him?
everything.
Handyman,
Yes, sir.
For Maggie to feed the dogs this time of night or check on them?
Oh, no. I mean, she played with those dogs all the time. And it's especially common for her she's been gone out to run.
Okay. So she pretty regularly comes out here in the evenings?
Very regular. Comes out here a lot.
Do you know any cameras on the property?
I have deer cameras, but none, around up here
Where are they at?
on different deer stands.
Okay, so deep in the woods.
Well, not necessarily deep in the woods. Some of them are in fields, and
Okay.
but there's none that are near here.
Okay.
What doctor's appointment? What doctor did you say?
She's been having trouble with her stomach and her tooth. I'm not positive. It was sort of a routine visit, and I can't remember. She told me the name of it, and I can't. I want to say Gordine is who I think she saw.
So was she back home around supper time? Or 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock?
I don't think she got back quite that early. I think she got back a little bit later than that.
Okay. What did you do today? Were you in the office or?
No, I was home. I came home. Paul and I messed around. I was up at the house. Laid down, took a nap on the couch, probably, I don't know, 25, 30 minutes. I got up, I called Maggie, didn't get an answer, and I left to go to my mom's. She had said she might ride with me, but she normally goes over there. And that big a deal.
And what time was that?
What time was what?
That you sent her a text message?
Alright. I texted her at 9:08, wanted to check on him, be right back. And then I called her before that. But let me make sure. Pretty sure that I called her 9:45. And then I tried Paul. And then, no, I think that was riding. I think that might have been riding over there. Three. I mean, my calls were right here.
Yeah.
So, obviously this is when I, at 10:06,
somebody else want some done?
You want any water, do that? I'm sorry, I don't need it.
Take some water.
It's not a big deal.
Yeah, I got some right here.
Oh, thank you. You know, you let me know.
What's another number in case I can't get you on your cell?
I don't have a house phone.
Okay.
My office number. I can give you my brother's cell phone.
All right, Miss Randy's.
Tay Randy's is 803-943-8881.
And John.
John Martin's 843-321-5508.
And you said your dad's in which hospital? Charleston or
Savannah and St. Joseph's.
is he doing okay or what's?
He's having a really, really hard time. He's got a lot going on. He's doing okay, given everything, but he's got a lot going on.
Now Maggie's family, where are they?
Somerville,
Have you been in touch with them?
contacted. Yes, I had my brother call Bart, the wife of his sister, and the husband of Maggie's sister, so that they could go and tell Maggie's parents. I felt like they needed to hear it in person, and they're going there and calling me. So they must not be there yet.
Maggie's parents in Somerville.
Yes, and her mom just had a knee replacement surgery, and her dad really had Alexander Jr.
He goes by Buster.
He goes by Buster.
Laura, you got anything?
This one's hard, but when you first saw Paul, you said you tried to flip him over. Was he laying on his back or on his stomach?
Just like he man.
Okay. And did he help Maggie a lot out? And when you first pulled into the property, did you come from this direction where all our police cars are, or which way did you come
I
in?
went to the house, then I came from the house
This way.
straight here. Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
I mean, where my vehicle was parked is probably,
is where it was, okay.
well, no, maybe not exactly, but it was pretty close, because I came back the same route.
That's right, because you went back to get yours.
Came
Okay.
back.
I can't think of anything else right now, but we'll certainly be in touch.
Thank y'all for everything y'all are doing.
So,
Can I answer that? Yeah. What? No, we're finished. Let me come out there where I'll be here when he gets here. No, don't let him come up here. Okay, yeah. I think we're about done. All right, thank you. I'm sorry.
Buster, in here.
Yes, sir. I
Um,
dropped my card. Thank you.
So the coroner will come over and talk to you. There'll be the autopsy and everything, and then go from there. But we'll come to you before we leave. Thank you very much. Here, you want this water?
Yes, please, thank you.
Yep.
What time was that interview?
I think it was 1 a.m.
Would you dispute 1257?
No, that sounds correct.
Would you describe that as an aggressive interview?
No.
As a part of your investigating procedure, had you listened to the 911 tape prior to this?
We did.
And you say we, who's we?
Myself and Special Agent Owen.
Did you have, can everybody hear? You speak in the mic, please. Speak in the mic, please, ma'am. You have that 911 knowledge in your mind when you were listening to this? Had you
I did.
already heard it?
Yes.
And on the 911 tape, how long had Alex Murdaugh been since he'd seen Maggie Murdaugh?
He's estimated 1.5 to 2 hours.
To 2 hours. 1.5 to 2 hours. And on this tape, your interview, what had he said about seeing Maggie? When was the last time he'd seen Maggie Murdaugh?
About 2 hours.
Did he say he took a nap?
He took a nap.
Did he say where he went after that?
I did.
Why?
Just the time of night.
Why?
With her being an Alzheimer's patient, they tend to be worse at night, so I seemed it was strange to go visit. Okay. It was 10. $10:06.
And this interview was 12:57?
Yes, that's correct.
In your interview, in Agent Owen's interview, did the defendant Alex Murdaugh tell you he tried to turn Paul over?
He did.
And did he say whether or not he had tried to check Paul's pulse and or Maggie's pulse?
He stated he tried to check both.
What did Mr. Murdaugh, Alex Murdaugh, say about the phone, if anything, that was in Paul's possession?
He stated his phone popped out of his pocket
When
he tried to check his pulse.
did he try to turn him over?
That's what he said.
There's a scene in here where Alexander Murdaugh is looking at his phone. You remember that?
Correct, yes.
Can you actually see the phone in there and the times and the messages on the video that he's looking at?
You can on the bottom left of the screen.
And what was that in response to that he was looking at that?
When I asked what time, he texted Matt.
So you saw those on his phone, looking at those when y'all were talking to him in the car?
I couldn't see from where I was sitting, but reviewing.
Yeah, do you see it?
Yes.
I've got a transcript here, but at the end of the video, toward the end of the interview, did Mr. Murdaugh say again he tried to turn over? That he tried to check it?
That's what he said.
And I know I asked you at the first, but I may not have done it too eloquently. Did he first tell you he tried to turn him over?
Yes, he did.
And I figured it out?
Yes,
And his cell phone popped out of his pocket?
that's correct.
And everybody heard it, but then something with it thinking maybe then I put it back down. What did you think about the phone popping out?
That was.
Have you ever moved dead weight?
I have.
If we could start with Elmo, please. Judge, these are a couple of these pictures that I think they have this on top of it, just to warn everybody, these are graphic photos. First is number 2. Who's this a picture of?
That's Maggie Murdaugh.
Did the defendant say he checked her pulse?
He did.
Did he tell you where?
He did not.
And before I get to it, did the defendant ever tell you he'd been down to the kennels that night in this interview?
No.
After his nap, where did he say he went?
Went to check on his mother in Hampton.
Just again, if you keep your computers coming, please. Fence 1. With the court's permission, I'd like for the detective to come down, please, Judge.
Yes.
Detective, I'm going to get what you won't block and I won't block her. I'm going to get back over here. Did his son Paul Murdaugh?
He did.
Did he tell you where he tried to get the pulse?
He did not. Just that he tried to turn him.
Say that last
He
time.
tried to turn him.
I think you've testified you tried to lift dead weight, right?
I have.
Can you describe what's around Paul Murdaugh?
Blood and brain matter.
And if you were to, where are his hands?
Underneath his body.
If you were to check the pulse of his hands, how would you do it?
You would have to try to lift him up and get his arms out from under him.
And roll it.
Correct.
By the way, where's his phone?
It's laying on the backside of his shorts.
Right there. Popped out, he said.
Yes.
Is that his brain?
You would have to try to lift his shoulder to get access his neck.
This way?
Correct.
Whether you're this way or this way, right?
Correct.
Either underneath or underneath.
Yes.
Is that right? Is that-
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Mhm.
Sorry. When you saw Alex Murdaugh, when you first came up to him, tell me this. I see you. Go back and sit down. Thank you. Did you observe it?
I did.
Why? What were your mental notes?
That he was clean.
Say that again.
That he was clean.
When you were in the car with him, did you observe his hands?
I did.
Did you see his arms?
I did.
And when you were out on the side of the road beforehand, did you see his shirt,
I did.
his pants,
Yes.
his shoes?
Yes.
Now, when you were at this scene, when you first got there, did you see any footprints anywhere around the body?
No.
Did you look at his shoes?
I did.
What kind of shoe? Alex Murdaugh shoes. What kind of shoes were they?
They were like an athletic tennis shoe.
Did you see anything that appeared to be blood on his shoe?
I did not.
I want you to look at the ladies and gentlemen of this church. Did you see what appeared to be blood on Alex Murdaugh's hands?
I did not.
On his arms?
No.
On his shirt? His shorts?
No.
On his shoes?
I did not.
How long was this after the 911 call?
2 hours, 2 to 3 hours.
All this fresh in his mind?
Yes.
How would you describe the defendant's hands when you saw him when you were interviewing him? How would you describe his hands?
They were clean.
How would you describe his arms?
They were clean.
How would you describe his t-shirt?
Clean.
How would you describe his shorts?
Clean.
How would you describe his shoes?
They were clean.
Beg question, no.
So,
You're not sure?
I'm not sure. No,
Okay.
sir.
So it may not have been taken.
Yeah.
Now, you were working with, hey, don't stand up. Miss David Owens, you were working with this lady?
Yes.
When you, after this interview, go to the actual house at 4147 now?
I did.
Okay. Did you go inside?
Just in the foyer, yes.
Okay. Did Agent Owens go inside? Shirt, shoes, and pants collected by Agent Owens?
Yes.
You didn't collect them, he did?
I did not.
And those are the same shirt, shoes, and pants he was wearing there?
Correct.
And Sled got them that night?
Yes.
Okay. after this, did you assist SLED in some things that came up, the system with getting Maggie's car?
I did.
Okay. Some other cell phone evidence?
Search warrants.
Were there a search of some of the areas? So you assisted SLED at some point throughout this investigation?
Did anything from the sheriff's office. Agent Owen could go through me or my evidence, or using our evidence bay to process anything. I was there to assist in any way that they needed.
And did you assist, I guess, in the helping with Alex Murdaugh's car as far as getting anything out of that car?
No, SLED processed that.
Now, if you just listen to my questions, I'm not going to lead you. I just want to ask you one final question. Is the individual in this courtroom who told you he tried to take the pulse of Maggie, individual in this courtroom who told you he tried to turn Paul over, told you that once, twice? Is the individual in this courtroom that you took that statement from, that we saw in this video, in this courtroom, and is the individual you described as point him out for the jury?
He's sitting at the defense table wearing a grayish-brown jacket and a white shirt.
Your Honor, we'd like the record to reflect she has pointed out the defendant, Richard Alexander Murdaugh.
It does.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have you go to the jury room for a leaves the courtroom. That's not an invitation for conversations until a recess takes place. We'll be in recess for 10 minutes. Rule 20 of the Rules of Criminal Procedure provides that there shall be no argument on objections unless requested. Report. Rule 19. Rule 19? 18. I'm sorry. Rule 18. No argument on, there we go, Rule 18B. Then Rule 43H of the Rules of Civil Procedure, which is applied to the Rules of Criminal Procedure through Criminal Procedure Rule 37, I believe it is. 37, yes. And that is that only one counsel examine a witness. State, the examining counsel only shall make objections. If Mr. Griffin is going to cross-examine, Mr. Griffin makes objections. Likewise with the state's attorney general, not any and everyone can jump up and object and argue. Any questions about either of those rules?
Your Honor, I understand the rule. So, as with the witness, they were attempting to get to testify about blood in the water yesterday, I objected, and it was a speaking objection. But when I object, will you, and sometimes invite argument, or I'm trying to preserve, sometimes invite argument, I'm trying to preserve objections in the record, and I'm just wondering, and since he doesn't get an appeal, that's not his concern, how would you like me to handle that?
Well, the objection speaks for itself. If the parties wish to place something on the record at some point in time after a witness after the examination is over, the court will give you that opportunity. But if we have speaking objections, if one party makes an objection and proceeds to argue it through a speaking objection, I give equal time to opposing. So we end up having a debate rather than that interrupts the trial and all of that. I certainly understand the defense's right to make a proper record, and we'll address that as is needed without there being a speaking objection.
For instance, they've listed hearsay, in my opinion. Should I say objection hearsay or just objection?
Yes, sir.
I can do that.
Yes, sir. The legal basis for the objection.
Okay.
Only.
Not a real advocacy.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
All right. Let's bring the jury.
The jury is present.
Thank you. Cross-examination. Mr. Griffin.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Detective Cross, good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Jim Griffin.
Detective Rutland.
Jim?
Rutland.
Rutland, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
My name is Jim Griffin, and I represent Alex Murdaugh. You had testified on direct examination a moment ago that that it was, you believe, somewhat unusual for Mr. Murdaugh to go visit his mother as late as 9:06 on a Monday evening. You recall testifying?
I do.
And you were sitting in the car when he was being interviewed, and you recall him saying that his father, Mr. Randolph Murdaugh, had just been put in the hospital that very day.
That's correct.
And that it was an unusual day because Mr. Randolph Murdaugh was not with Ms. Libby Randolph, and she gets anxious when that occurs. You remember that?
I remember him saying
Okay.
something along those lines.
And in that context, you don't criticize a son who goes to visit his mother who has early onset dementia on the very day in the afternoon that the father is admitted to the hospital. You're not here to criticize him for that, are you?
No, I didn't criticize. I just made a mental note that was interesting.
Okay. And you walked the crime scene when you arrived, and you made some mental notes and observations that you subsequently recorded in a report, did you not?
I did.
And one of the things that you mentally noted and then subsequently reported was that a tremendous amount of blood spatter in the feed room area and around where Paul was murdered. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And there was brain matter and organic matter all about the place where Paul was murdered, correct?
That's correct.
And I think you even described that there was matter, that blood that went up to the ceiling and to the door and spatter everywhere, right?
That's correct.
And you also told the jury that Alec was clean. And you're referring to his shirt was clean, correct?
Correct.
His shorts were.
Correct.
You remember the litany of Mr. Metters? Shorts, shirts, shoes were clean, correct?
That's correct.
He was clean, correct?
To my visual eye, he was clean. Yes.
And to your visual eye, it did not look like he had just blown his son's head off in the confines of a feed room where splatter is everywhere. Isn't that correct?
I didn't say that.
Well, let me ask you. In your mind's eye, that night on June 7th, did he look like someone had just blown his son's head off, spatter going everywhere?
Again, I can't say that for sure. A lot of things would come into play to affect that. Distance is one of them.
Well, certainly if he appeared that way on the night of June the 7th, you, a sworn law enforcement officer, you would have initiated a process to take him into custody, I suspect, wouldn't you?
No, that was not my role that evening. I was just assisting.
Well, one of the things you did that evening, Ms. Rutland, was you obtained a search warrant, did you not?
I did.
And that was your first official duty in connection with this double homicide investigation.
That's correct.
And I'm going to show you Exhibit 3, Your Honor. I shared it with Mr. Metters during the break and asked the witness to identify it. You recognize Exhibit 3?
I do. This is the search warrant I got that night.
Your Honor, we'd move Exhibit 3 into evidence this time, I believe without objection.
No objection.
It's admitted.
I have it. So, Terry, please, Exhibit 3 is, well, first, let's just talk about a search warrant. What is a search warrant?
It grants us the right to search a certain item that may be evidence in a case.
And this search warrant was for what property?
4147 Moselle Road in Islandton, County of Colleton, State of South Carolina.
And it covers the whole roughly 1,700 acres of the whole property, does it not?
That is correct.
And it covers the house, the residence where you went into the foyer, right?
Correct.
It covers all the outbuildings, correct?
Correct.
And it gives you the right to seize any type of evidence, correct?
That is correct.
Let me see if I can get Mr. Elmo to work. Can you turn it on, please? got to turn sideways. All right. Let's see if we can read that document. Is there light you can turn on here? That's much better. And can we zoom it? All right. Okay. Got it. Thank you. So, and this is the search warrant, right?
Yes, it is.
And it says description of premises to be searched. And here it's 3147 Moselle Road, Islington. And then there's a PIN number. What's the PIN number?
That's a property identification number that's assigned to every parcels of real property within the county. It's set by the tax office.
And it says the property to be searched are any residences, vehicles, outbuildings, kennels, or sheds, right?
That is correct.
And then it says the description of the property to search and to be seized, and that's under the description of property, right?
Correct.
And you prepared this document for the magistrate.
I did.
And here says evidence that may be used or taken during the commission of a crime of homicide to include but not limited any item, tool, clothing, gloves, mask, hats, hoodies, shoes, boots, jewelry, firearms, ammunition, shell casings, gunshot residue, weapons, identification documents, any paperwork, etc. It says any evidence inside vehicles on the property, any evidence found in outbuildings or sheds, any tire, shoe impressions, any and all DNA to include but not limited to fingerprints, etc. Any drugs, narcotics, drugs, paraphernalia, any and all cellular phones, phone records to include incoming, outgoing calls, text messages, voice messages, etc. Then it goes on to talk about photographs and whatnot. It's all encompassing, isn't it?
It is.
And this is basically as broad of a search warrant that you draft because it's a homicide investigation and it gives you carte blanche on the property of the crime scene, right?
That's correct.
And with the search warrant, you had the authority to go in the house and look for unclean, dirty clothes. Did you not?
I wasn't in that capacity that evening.
Well, the search warrant provided that authority to law enforcement, did it not?
It would have, yes.
And you mentioned that you got into the law enforcement business because you're CSI TV junkie of sorts. Did I understand you to say that?
Yeah, I was.
Okay, and you've seen CSI shows where they go and they look in the drains of showers or sinks and to see if blood residue had been recently flushed through there. That's possible, is it not?
It could be.
And that's just not on TV. I mean, that's skills that SLED's crime team has available to them, correct?
I don't know what they have available, but that would be a crime scene unit question.
The and actually there were the clean clothes that Alex Murdaugh was wearing that night. They were seized, were they not?
Yes.
Okay, and the clean shoes were seized.
Yes.
And the clean shirt was seized, was it not?
Yes, it was.
Okay. But that you were in the house when that happened, but you didn't collect the.
I did not collect in the foyer.
And who did the collection? Do you recall?
Special Agent Owen.
And when was he assisted by anybody?
I was just standing by. They went to a back bedroom, and I was in the foyer area. It was like an open floor plan.
And do you recall how? Do you recall what Mr. Owen, Detective Owen, Special Agent Owen, apologize, Detective Owen, Special Agent Owen, did you observe what he collected the clothes in?
I did not.
Did he collect all the clothes and put them in one paper bag?
I don't recall.
Now, the jury heard the complete video audio of the interview with Alex Murdaugh on the evening, early morning hours of June the 8th. and yet you were asked to repeat some of the things that he said, and I want to. I mean, the tape speaks for itself. I don't want anyone to misconstrue your testimony, so I just want to ask you: are you saying that Mr. Murdaugh tried to turn his son over 2 times on that tape, or that on 2 occasions he described one incident that he tried to turn his son over?
The latter, that he explained twice, 2 different times.
So in answer to your questions, if anyone would walked away thinking that Alex Murdaugh told you that he tried to turn him over 2 times, that would just be, and we've now clarified it, right?
Correct.
Okay. Now, you never asked, or Special Agent Owen never asked Mr. Murdaugh how he tried to turn his son over, correct?
Correct.
And so, you see Mr. Metters crawling around on the floor down here as trying to reenact something, but that night he never was asked specifically, what did you do to try to turn your son over, correct?
That's correct. We did not ask that.
And that night he was not asked specifically how the phone popped out of his pocket while you were trying to turn him over, correct?
Correct.
And that night he was not asked specifically how far were you able to move Paul, if at all, when you tried to flip him over, correct?
Correct.
And in fact, did he really even say that I was trying to flip him over to check his pulse?
I'd have to check the transcript, but I believe he said something along those lines.
Or did he tell you where he tried to check Paul's pulse?
He did not.
So we don't know from your interview, or Special Agent Owen's interview, how he tried to turn him over, how the phone popped out, or at least how Alex describes it, and where on Paul's body he attempted to check his pulse, correct?
Correct.
And you were asked questions about whether there were knee prints and footprints by Paul's body, next to his body, right?
Yes, I was asked that.
And did you do such a forensic analysis, investigation to see if there were boot prints or footprints around?
I looked with my eyes.
Okay. And were you aware that before you got there? Well, what time did you get there?
Can I check my notes?
Sure.
Okay.
You can take this down. Through with Mr. Elmo. I think I'm through with it for now.
12:22 a.m. I was on scene.
Okay, 12:22 a.m. And Paul's body and Maggie's bodies were covered up with a sheet, but still present, correct?
Correct.
So when you were looking at Paul's body, just observing whether there are footprints near him, you couldn't see right next to his body because of the sheet, could you?
The sheet was mostly on his body, not on the cement on the ground next to the body.
Was it a fitted sheet?
No, but it wasn't a queen sheet either.
Okay. Then the jury has seen photos of the sheet. Were you aware that Captain Chapman and others went around Paul's body and lifted the sheet up to see if there was a gun underneath him?
Not as at the scene, no.
Well, I take it you did not observe their footprints anywhere in the area either then, right?
Not that I recall.
And you said that Alex's pants were clean. Remember saying that?
I remember saying that.
What color pants did he have on?
Khaki.
All right. And are you aware of any forensic testing that had been done to the pants to see whether there was blood on the pants
Night?
subsequently?
No, there was nothing done forensically.
That night, nothing was done forensically.
Not before I interviewed him, no.
Right. And you just did not observe any blood on his pants or in his pocket?
No, just simply speaking with him like this, looking him up and down, I did not see any blood on him.
And he didn't look like someone who had just been within feet of blowing Paul's head off, right?
Again, I can't say that. There's so many different factors that you would have to take into account.
Now, you did a lot more, I believe, that night. After you left, well, let's go back. When you got to the scene, you partnered up with Agent Owen, correct?
That's correct.
And you saw inside the shed, and you observed there was wadding on the floor near his feet, Paul's feet.
Correct.
And when you say wadding, what are you talking about?
The internal components of a shotgun shell.
And then you saw in the rear window of the shed there were several holes, right?
That is correct.
And you described in your report that you saw large amounts of blood spatter and brain skull matter were on the door to the shed and the items within the storage building. You saw all that, right?
That's correct.
And then you went and examined Maggie's body, did you?
I wouldn't say examined. I would just say I looked at her.
And well, one of the things that you noticed when you were looking at Maggie's body, I believe, you said you noticed there are a few clumps of her hair and a broken earring were located near a UTV tire, right?
That is correct.
UTV tire.
I'm sorry?
What do you mean by UTV?
All-terrain vehicle, it's like a four-wheeler, side-by-side.
And you talked about these foot impressions that you observed, right?
I did.
And I said I was done with Mr. Elmo, but I'm not. Can we put these back, please? Can you turn on Elmo? It's on. Oh, there it is. How do you zoom in, Doug? Let's just change the color. Make it light. Okay. All right. I think that's good. Okay. May not be a good one. That's okay. Thanks. You mentioned that you told investigators that worked for me and Mr. Harpootlian that the boot prints were not yours in these photos, right?
That is correct.
But now you told the jury that the boot prints are yours.
That's incorrect. Those are not my boot prints.
Okay. Whose boot prints are they?
I don't know.
Oh, so okay. That's why I get to do this. So,
Objection to his comments.
Yes, we're supposed
so you don't know whose boot prints those are.
No.
All right. Now, one thing about this search warrant that I asked you about earlier, it was, do you have it up there?
I couldn't remember if I gave it back to you or
No, I
not.
don't think you did, but it's okay. It was never executed, was it?
Oh. I handed this off to SLED agents once I was at the scene. Thank you.
You said you handed the search warrant off to SLED agents.
I did.
Okay. But to your knowledge, was it ever executed?
Yes, it was.
Or you think it was executed? And why do you say that?
Because the SLED crime scene unit, I was present while they were processing the scene and executing the warrant.
And so there are two ways that law enforcement can get access to property. One and one's by consent. Is that right?
That's correct.
Now, are you aware that Mr. Murdaugh gave SLED, Colleton County, any law enforcement, FBI, carte blanche consent to search his property?
That wasn't relayed to me. I was tasked with being a search warrant, so I did.
Okay, and once a search warrant is executed, a return is filed with the magistrate who issued it, right?
That's correct.
And you never filed a return on that search warrant, right?
Do you have, like I said, it was given to SLED, so.
So we'll find out more about that. I mean, you didn't file a return, that's all you can say, right?
I don't recall. I have to check my notes.
You heard on the tape, you heard Mr. Murdaugh say you can do anything, look for anything. Do you remember him just giving consent to whatever you need?
As far as speaking with him, yes, I remember him saying that.
Okay. And you walked back through the crime scene one last time before you cleared the area on the morning of the 8th, is that right?
You could say that. We were walking around the whole night and staying out of the way of the crime scene unit.
Were you there when the crime scene unit left?
No, I was not. They were still processing when I left.
Oh. Do you know whether or not the crime scene unit left shotgun pellets behind in the feed room?
I have no knowledge of any of that.
20, 30, even more shotgun pellets left behind the feed room. Were you aware of that?
Objection is sustained.
On Thursday, June 10th, 2 days, 3 days, Thursday, June the 10th, you went with SLED, a number of SLED agents and law enforcement agents, went to meet with Mr. Murdaugh, Mr. Murdaugh's brothers, Randy and John Marvin, Mr. Murdaugh's son, and they all agreed to meet, and y'all found a location outside of Varnville, I believe. You remember doing that?
I do. I remember doing that.
And that was during that. I believe you and a SLED agent interviewed Mr. Randy Murdaugh, correct?
That's correct.
Mr. Randy Murdaugh agreed to allow the download of his cell phone, correct?
That's correct.
And gave consent, right?
He did.
And Mr. Alex Murdaugh, to your knowledge, gave consent to download his cell phone, correct?
To my knowledge, yes.
And Mr. John Marvin Murdaugh did the same, correct?
Correct.
And Mr. Buster Murdaugh did the same, correct?
He did.
And everyone gave a voluntary interview that day, to your knowledge, right?
They did.
And then a little bit later, on the Wednesday, June 16th, you assisted SLED when they went out to the Moselle property and went diving, searching for, well, let me ask you. When you assisted SLED dive team, or did you assist SLED dive team on June 16th, 2020?
I did.
And with a search of the Moselle property, focusing on waterways, ponds, the Salkehatchie River access points for evidence from the crime, correct?
That's correct.
Were you looking for the firearms that were used to murder Maggie and Paul?
We were looking for anything that could have been linked to their murders.
And then you utilized ATVs and canvassed the entire 1,700 acres of land.
I did. That was my assignment that day.
And once again, that was done with consent by Mr. Murdaugh, correct?
That is correct.
And then went back the next day and dove another pond on the property. You remember doing that?
I didn't dive, but I was standing by, yes.
You were there.
Yes.
And again, that was with consent, right?
Correct.
And then you were given consent and you did a search of a white F-250 pickup that Paul normally drove, right?
That is correct.
And while you were there, Mr. Davis shows up, and Mr. Davis, you understood to be the caretaker for the dogs.
Yes, that's what he explained his job title was at Moselle.
And that, did you observe him doing his work that day? Did you watch him wash down the dog runs?
I don't remember that part.
But to look at his tire marks and make an assessment as to whether they appeared to match the tire marks that were seen under the shed portion next to the old airplane hangar, right?
That's correct. He parks under the canopy next to TV.
And then on Friday, June the 18th, you had a meeting and you looked at some photos, I believe crime scene photos at SLED, correct?
I did.
And you made a mental note and you put it in your record that you noticed a few strands of what appeared to be brown hair, unable to determine the length from the photo in Maggie's hands and fingers, right?
That is correct.
And you thought that that possibly was indication of a struggle, that Maggie had grabbed someone, had their hair in her hands, right?
I didn't say that in my report, no.
Well, so why did you note it in your report?
Because it was an observation.
Well, you also noticed that there were some injuries, what appeared to be to Paul's face, that like he had been some type of struggle, right?
I noted what to me could have been scratches or a bruise.
And we heard some testimony yesterday about a bolo on the lookout for a white pickup that Paul normally drives. I mean, that pickup was correct?
That's correct. It was broken down.
Yeah, and you learned through your investigation that Paul had switched vehicles with his uncle John Marvin, and John Marvin was rushing to Moselle when he got the phone call in Paul's truck, and it broke down on the side of the road.
Yeah, that's correct. It was I believe Mr. Randolph struggled to get in and out of the truck.
Did Colony County Sheriff's Office put out a statement to the press on the morning of June the 8th that there's no need to public to be alarmed?
I don't believe that came from our office. It did not come through CID for approval. I never seen that press release.
So was Alex Murdaugh, you're assisting SLED, night of June the 7th, morning June the 8th, Murdaugh, a suspect
That night, everybody was a suspect.
Everybody? Can you be more specific? Who else were suspects besides?
Well, there was reasons we were asking certain questions: who his best friend is, who their routine each day. There were so many different scenarios it could have been that night. So, in my view, everybody was a suspect at that point,
Including Alec?
including Alec.
Beg the court's indulgence.